2B has finally come out for Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising. What a splash she is making. Being one of the most unique characters in the game with a bunch of unique systems, she is definitely breaking the mold from the rest of the cast. With a parry system, a different skill system, and a different normal system, which trades out dash normals in favor of combo enders, 2B is shaping up to be one of the most unique characters in the cast. So, let's get into it. Let's talk about 2B in Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising. Now, everything about 2B works a little bit differently from the rest of the cast. This means we're gonna have to go through every single bit of her character, which I don't mind, but means we might be here for a while. We'll start with the biggest difference between her and the rest of the cast, how her normals work. Instead of having close and far normals and then a normal combo string depending on what button you are pressing, 2B will always have strings based on whatever button she presses. Light, medium, and heavy all have unique attack strings that they can go into on both hit, block, and whiff. Each sequence can be pressed up to 4 times in order to get 4 different moves, with the first 3 all being special cancelable. The last one is a generic ender move. These are all generally safe on block, apart from the medium one, which is very negative. The best bit is, though, that 2B is able to go into enders early if she presses a different button. This will cancel you out of the unique string, and you are not able to special cancel these enders. On top of this, 2B has 0 dash normals, meaning that she is going to have to use her normal moves with momentum if she wants to get in. This isn't too much of a problem with her because, well, we'll get into that later, but it is a unique quirk of the character. Going back to the enders for a second, there are 3 different enders that 2B can get depending on the string that she uses and the button that she presses. I have given all of these a dubbed name so that you can understand what we're looking at. The first ender I like to call Baseball. This is a basic frame trap that can be done by pressing heavy while in a light string, or light while in a heavy string. This move is unique as it has a timing minigame which can make it plus on block. The moment you go into the ender, a small gadget will appear above 2B. If the strike hits the gadget, it will send it forward as a projectile, leaving 2B plus on block. The frame advantage can change based on how far 2B is. If she's at full screen, the projectile will leave her plus 19. But if she's right in front of the opponent's face, it will only leave her plus 3. Nothing to scoff at, but a massive difference. Each unique ender that she does also refills a little bit of her skill gauge. We'll get onto this a little bit later. Just know that each hit of this ender gives you 1 block of skill gauge. 1 for if you hit the strike, and 1 if the projectile connects. If the attacks whiffed or are blocked, you do not get any of the skill gauge. The second ender is what I like to call evasive maneuver. By pressing M on L strings or L on M strings, 2B flips backwards and sends forward a projectile. This is your safest ender on any of the strings, as there is no way that the opponent can mash through it and hit you. You have the option to not send the projectile, which causes 2B to recover faster. If you do this, she will be very negative on block, but obviously she will recover faster. If you send the projectile, you will be safer on block, but it takes long to recover. If the opponent gets through your projectile by rolling through it, spot dodging, or jumping over it, you could be in a world of hurt. So it's good to mix up which version of this ender you do in order to keep your opponent guessing. If the first bit of the attack and the projectile hits, you recover 2 gauges. If only one of them connects, you only get 1 gauge. The final ender is Wii Ball. By pressing H on M strings or M on H strings, 2B flips a little bit through the air and slams both her swords down. This is your big damage ender, and it causes you to get 2 gauge on hit. It gives you a soft knockdown which leads to potential Oki. Be very careful when using this on block as it is negative 15. It's a good way to cash out a combo if you have nothing else to use. Before we get onto her skill system, we need to go over her unique attack. Her unique attack is a parry system, kinda. 2B can either dash forward or dash back, giving her parry frames as she dashes. The parry does not come out frame 1, meaning that you need to time it correctly with your opponent's attack if you want to get the parry. 2B is also able to press U while in the middle of the parry in order to do a counter-attack move. This is a simple get-off-me tool and is very good at getting opponents out of their string. That's not the big bit of it for me, though. The dash forward and dash back both create a lot of space, with the dash forward adding momentum to your attacks. Meaning by adding a little bit of startup to your attacks, you are able to make them go much further, compensating for the fact that you do not have dash normals. So unique skill forward L is basically like 6XL, but a little bit more obvious since the game has a massive sound when you do it. These evasive maneuvers can be very tricky. Obviously, they make very loud sounds. However, you are able to cancel the forward one into the back one. So if your opponent is stuffing your approach with the forward one, you are able to force them to whiff by backdashing out of their range. The parry is also very helpful and something that over time I'm sure will become an absolute nuisance. You can also cancel any normal into the parry dash. However, with the way that normals work, you're probably not actually going to parry anything by doing this. It's a simple way to reset pressure, which is actually really good. You can use it to get strike throws, or you can use it in order to get more plus frames. However, this does cost a little bit of the skill gauge. I think it's about time we finally get onto that. The observant among you may have noticed that 2B does not have universal cooldowns like every other character. In fact, all of her special moves are tied to the skill gauge. For the sake of consistency, since some attacks that 2B has cost both skill gauge and her super gauge, if I say the word gauge from here on, I'm referring to her skill gauge, and if I say the word meter, I am referring to her super meter. The skill gauge is used for basically every single special move that 2B has, as well as the dash cancel. Depending on the special move, it will cost more or less skill gauge, with some of them having very high costs and some of them having very low costs. However, this does mean if you have enough skill gauge, you are able to use the same move multiple times without waiting for a cooldown. It is also important to note that you cannot overspend this gauge. There's no Street Fighter 6 drive shenanigans here. If you do not have enough gauge in the skill gauge for your attack will not come out. This is very important while you're on offense, because sometimes you'll do something and you won't realize you don't have enough skill gauge, and it just won't happen, and you'll cry in the corner. The skill gauge has 10 separate blocks to it, and these all refill over time. Obviously, if you use some enders, you will get some skill gauges back instantly. However, by simply playing neutral and attacking your opponent, you will also recover skill gauge. While you are getting attacked, you do recover skill gauge, but you recover it at a much slower rate. So let's get on to her specials. 236L is a negative on-block combo ender and pressure ender tool. It costs 0 blocks of the skill gauge. This is your safe pressure ender if you don't want to do anything else. It can also probably be used as combo filler somewhere, but I think that's going to be coming down later down the line. It is important to note that when you use this move, your skill gauge does stop refilling. So even though it's free, you want to be careful when you're using it. It may be better to go into an ender if you've confirmed a hit so you can get more skill gauge back, but if not, this can be used to cut your losses. 236M is 2B's dedicated projectile, being a full screen beam. This costs free gauge. It's kind of slow, being 22 frames, and it leaves her -4 on block when in front of her opponent's face. However, this is still safe on block in this game, so it could be a lot worse. A nice projectile to check people who are at the further edge of the screen, but nothing more than that, really. 236H is a multi-hit projectile that costs 5 gauge. This is a really good pressure tool and combo tool. Depending on the range, 2B can be as plus 19 if it hits at max range. And in the corner, it leads to completely free follow-ups. Downside is obviously that it costs half of your skill gauge, so you need to be careful when using it. 236U is a big-ass laser that costs 4 gauge and 50% of your meter. This is what 236M wishes it was. A plus on block crumple laser that absolutely annihilates anything that it sees. Very fun to use. Also, fun fact, that crumple can be used for combos with a move that we'll talk about later. Let me know if you notice it. Her 214L is a lariat that costs free gauge. It is a really fast approach tool that goes about half screen. It doesn't have any invincibility frames, but it does have a massive hitbox, potentially leading to trades. The downside is that it leaves you -6 on block, so you can be punished by far Ls. A very good thing if you want to get in or force your opponent to get close to the corner in a combo, but maybe only use it when your opponent's not expecting it. 214M is a slow projectile that pulls 2B into the opponent when it connects. This move costs free gauge. This is a 23 frames projectile that leaves 2B plus on block and pulls her into the opponent. It is very funky, and also very avoidable. Once you've got your opponent conditioned to not do anything, though, it is a very good way to keep the pressure on. Not to mention, if you combine it with the big-ass laser we talked about, you get a free combo for 7 gauge. 214H is a funny hammer move, and it costs 5 gauge. This Looney Tune-ass move is honestly one of 2B's strongest moves. If it hits close range, it doesn't actually do anything. But if you hit them with the actual hammer bit of the hammer, not only does it leave 2B plus on block, but if they are being hit, it causes the opponent to ground bounce, leading to more combos. A very good combo tool if you are hitting your opponent with heavies. Also absolutely amazing if you want to just dump resources into a combo. 214U is 2B's dedicated DP move. It costs 4 gauge and half of your meter. It deals okay damage and looks flashy, but that's about it. It's very easily baitable since it's a sphere around you and not actually an upwards going DP, so use it sparingly, or just as a panic option. 22L has 2B jump in the air and slam pod into the ground. This costs 3 gauge. This is a plus on block move that auto shimmies and is a good way to reset your pressure. If the opponent gets hit, it causes them to trip, leading to a little bit of Oki, and it can be used in certain situations to make yourself even more plus. It's a very nice move and is very fun, but it can be called out by an observant opponent. 22M is a gravity ball that pulls the opponent closer into it over time. This costs 3 gauge. This move does deal 0 damage. However, it has the added effect of keeping the opponent in place if they are the center of the wormhole. If they do not move on the outer edges, it will slowly pull them into the wormhole. However, at these ranges, they can walk away and not be affected by it. It's very good if you want to set up some tricky shenanigans, but I think this is going to be one of the tools that takes a long time for players to figure out how to use. Her 22H has pod hover above the opponent. This costs 5 gauge and disables all of 2B's special moves for the time being. She is still able to parry and counterattack while the move is active though. By pressing 22H again, she is able to activate the move and cause the opponent to be attacked by pod, leaving her plus on block, or giving her a combo extension. I think this move's going to be very good if we get some fuzzy setups, or some weird jank that makes them not realize what's happening, but apart from that, it's just a nice way to get a little bit of extra pressure, I guess. Her 22U has pod dump a bunch of projectiles on the opponent, leaving 2B extremely plus on block. This costs 4 gauge and 50% of your meter. This is really useful for Oki if you want to spend the meter, and you can get it in some weird ways depending on the hits that you get. However, pod will not track the position of the opponent. Once they lock in that first ball, they will not move, meaning that if you do it on block, the opponent can roll or jump away. In fact, if they're extremely observant, they can just run past pod and not be affected by the move at all. Because of the high cost of this move, you want to make sure that you're using it when your opponent isn't going to move. Be very careful when using this. And that's all of 2B's moves. Every single one. Jesus Christ. 2B is easily one of the trickier characters in the entire cast. And if you want to play her well, you're gonna have to put a bit of time into figuring out how she plays. However, from the looks of it, she has tools that can be used all over the screen. She has the potential for insane combos and mix-ups with her traps and silly setups, and I cannot wait to see how this character develops. But for now, how should you play 2B? Well, 2B does have a lot of good options, but most of them are very good while being close up. You're going to want to use your evasive maneuvers in order to try and get in on your opponent and condition them to block a lot. By running forward, you make it so that your normals go further like you would with a dash normal. So use this to get in on oblivious opponents. You can also cancel the forward run into backwards dash if you really need to. Good for baiting people who like to try and stuff your approaches. Once you're in, 5L is short but is +2 on block, meaning that you can stagger your pressure or you can go straight into M for some basic frame traps. As a reminder, 5M is 9 frames, so if your opponent mashes 5L or 2L, there is a chance that you will get hit out of it. You want to use your tricky strings and enders to condition the opponent to block as much as possible. A lot of 2B's good enders have her do something very obvious that can be easily countered, so you want to make sure that your opponent isn't looking for them. This is the benefit of having a lot of moves though. By having a lot of different tricky shit you can do, you can force your opponent to have a massive mental stack and not realize that something simple is coming their way. Once you got the opponent to block, use plus on block enders or use your evasion cancels in order to get some tricky setups. Doing medium string into evasion can give you a nice throw setup, and using 22L after it can also give you a decent shimmy. Plus you can use 5L again to get plus on block pressure. You have to be careful while doing all of this though. Remember, your gauge works very differently to the rest of the cast. You're not always going to have access to all of your abilities. Instead of having it so that only that move is on cooldown, there is a chance you cannot afford the move that you want to do. So you have to make sure that you adjust accordingly to the amount of meter that you have. Getting meter back on the offensive can be pretty easy if the opponent gets hit, but you need to be aware of what is happening. As for on defense, cry about it. 2B doesn't really seem to have very good defensive options. Her 2L and 5L are both 6 frames, but her only dedicated DP costs 50 meter, and let's be real, it's pretty shit. You're gonna have to rely on actually being able to block and spot dodge in order to get out of a lot of pressure. Apart from that though, get your opponent to the corner, absolutely pump damage, and then feel like a fucking legend when you hit those combos. And most importantly, have fun. 2B is a very cool character, and I'm always happy to see her in a bunch of different fighting games. I will say it's a little bit weird that the 2 fighting games she's in have entire features where she loses her clothes, but, you know, we'll look past it for now. And with that, you have a better understanding of how to play 2B. I hope. I will be streaming live on twitch.tv. Make sure that you're over there. Thank you all for watching. Go enjoy 2B. I'll hopefully see you all on Saturday. As always, a very special thanks to 64MHz, Almost Nap Time, Ben from Canada, Cervantes de Leon, Daniel Wiedericht, Edison Luttery, Fexo, Games.png, I Am Naruto, Knife and Spoon, Critty Cat, MP04, Mr. Clen, Ray W, Sergeant Cubby, Super, Falcon, Tom Tanks, Velvet Puppy, Volta, and Zandatsu for being Tier 2 Patreon supporters.